Well, hello, Kathleen.
Well, hello, Mandy.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I like your background. It's very fancy.
Thank you.
Well, it's amazing, I think, that the whole world has decided we all know how to do this tech stuff. Like, I just got off a Zoom in Denver because I'm going to do a show out there. It was a TV Zoom, and like for their local whatever. But there's all these instructions. Like, I am a comedian. I did not attend school for this stuff. I'm not skilled, put it that way. I can get my face on here, but it just during COVID, it just became an assumption. Well, of course you can do all that. You're just sitting at home doing nothing, drinking beer while you learn something, Kathleen. Well, maybe Kathleen doesn't want to learn all this.
Well, and like, I don't think people understand like recording in this way. Like I go up to the same microphone every single week, and like there's always some sort of a problem. I don't know if you have that problem recording your podcast, but like there's just so much more that goes into it than like pressing a button. There's always technical problems, and I get so frustrated.
I feel like the podcast part, I've kind of, because that's just repeating itself. But what I have noticed is like a lot of radio people now do it from their house, but they forgot that the lady or the guy is a morning DJ. They're not a tech person. So when they call, all I hear is echoes. And then
yeah.
And then they're like, well, I'm trying to fix it. Well, you should go back to the office. Go back to the studio. Or make the studio. There's got to be a child there that knows how to do everything. A young person, make them come to your home.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if that's what you're doing, like that's what we ended up doing is like making an actual studio in our basement because, as you know, the podcast went from like our kitchen table and it sounded horrible at the beginning. And that's not David's fault. We were just learning. But eventually we were like, we need like a stable, solid place that isn't my parents' kitchen table to do this thing. And
I didn't think it sounded horrible in the beginning, though. But I also had nothing to compare it to. I don't know. I mean, I listen to whatever. And I also don't expect people to be sound engineers. Like the amount of people that will complain and go, well, this week the podcast, blah, blah, blah. You know what? It's free. That's all I said back.
I know. You're welcome for that free gift that I gave you that you complained about. I'm with you on that.
Come to the point in society where people feel that they are allowed to complain about free things. No, you can't do that. Hit block. You're blocked.
And that like the person giving the free thing is supposed to care about the receiver's opinions of the gift. Like, no, I don't care.
Like if that was really wrong, I want to know. Like if it's really wrong. But if you're just going to nitpick because you can't see all of my face or whatever they have to say, I'm like, wow, you guys have gotten so spoiled. And then sometimes I won't do one just for a week, just on purpose.
I just don't want to.
This is why it's free. This is why you can't have nice things because you can't behave.
Right. I just can't believe like the amount of people that take the time. I listened to a bunch of podcasts before I started mine, and there was a bunch that I didn't like. I just didn't, or there was little things I didn't like about it, but it never in a billion years would have crossed my mind to like stop what I was doing, find the person who created that podcast and be like, this is why I stopped listening to you, or this is what bothered me about this, blah, blah. No, I just stopped because they shouldn't care what I think. I don't mean anything to them. I never, before I got involved in all this, I never understood like the entire, I just was never aware that so many people had high opinions of themselves.
Well, they're critiques. I also, if I didn't like a podcast, like I would never, I would never email or comment, but I wouldn't even know where to go to do that. I would have to Google the person's name and then figure out where do I contact them. It seems like an awful lot of work to just say your hair looked weird.
Right. I mean, Yeah, I've thought about that too. I don't have that time. And also, I would just feel bad doing it. Like, if I'm going to make a comment to somebody that could possibly, I always think about like, well, would this stop them from what they're doing? Would this like get into their head too much? Like, I just don't want to ever say anything to anybody if it's unnecessary. Like, if you're Dick Harpootlian, I'm going to come after you because you're doing bad things.
Right.
And I'm going to make fun of you and whatever. But if you're just like trying your best, trying to make a little podcast, not hurting anybody, like, God bless you. I'm supportive. Of it. I was just thinking the last time I saw you was at Taylor Swift.
Yeah, yes, in Denver. Yeah. That was a great concert for me because there were no lines in the alcohol line.
Yeah, there were. What was up with that?
As I call these super young people, the children, because Michael Jackson always used to go, the children just don't drink like us adults drink. And it was just a wonderful, like, if you go to, I don't know, Stevie Nicks or something, it's going to take a hot minute to get a beer.
Right.
No, I should only go to Taylor Swift concerts if I'm really in the mood to drink.
Right. I didn't notice. I went to one in Tampa, but the one in Tampa, I didn't notice at the one in Denver, but the one in Tampa, the men's restroom line was like around the stadium because they blocked off like so many of the they made a lot of the men's restrooms women's because there was so many. Yeah, it was wonderful.
But my friend Bob, who went with me, he said, even though they flipped the line, you still don't want to go in there. It's still disgusting. It's still as bad. And I'm like, okay, well, then I won't. But the merch lines at her thing, wow. I've never seen anything like that. Even like the last craziest thing I saw was the Elton John merch line for his last tour. But that thing, I'm so glad I didn't care if I had a T-shirt.
Yeah, well, my secret was to go during a song. Like, I am a super Swiftie, but there are some songs that are like, I don't really care about. But I don't really care about Love Story that much. So I bolted off during Love Story and got my stuff. And there was no merch line during the concert.
Oh, okay.
Not at all. It was awesome.
Now the kids know. Now they know what to do. Well, okay. So, like, are you good if you're out on this book tour? I've always wondered this. Like, as a comedian, we're like at a show and people can't really, but if you go do a book signing, wait, there you are. Is it weird, the one-on-one?
Well, there's just so many weird things about the whole book process. And I don't know. Are you interested in writing a book?
No, but my comedian friends have, and no, I'm not good. Like,
don't do it.
No, I don't like
do it.
My friend Lewis Black has written a bunch, and whenever he goes to do it, I'm like, oh no, that means you're going to be in book jail, because he like has to kind of be by himself, and you have to kind of get in a rhythm, which means he's not very social anymore.
Yeah,
and that could go on for like 6 weeks, and then I've lost my friend. Where, like, you would not want me in your house because I'd just be like knocking on the door every 5 seconds going, are you done yet? Come on, let's go. It's happy hour.
Right. Well, and then after you get done with that super hard process of writing it, the work continues. You have to, like, I don't know. I just didn't think that this much work was involved. And I'm used to very hard work. I was a journalist for over 10 years in newspapers. Like, I'm used to hard work, but this is just an exhausting, long process. And it's like the second that you get done with the manuscript, you're starting, there's just has been no end. And the promotions part is weird for me too, because now it's like, okay, you got done with all this work and all this process, and now go sell yourself and go sell the book and tell people why you're great. And I don't really enjoy doing that a whole lot.
I've really wondered that about people. Like, if you're a comedian, you put yourself out there, you went to open mic night. I did this on purpose to me. But if you're an author, if you're going to write a book, it's like you're kind of doing a solitary thing. It's not really a super social thing. And then they expect you at the end to become Miss Social. And we get on down there to the bookstore and meet people. And that one-on-one, I would be terrified that someone would come up and just start going through everything that was wrong in my book, even if it wasn't wrong. But I don't like, that's a little close of proximity for the judgmental people, especially with a subject like that.
Right. Well, I've had 2 like events, and they weren't huge, but we had a couple hundred people at we went to this brose shop called the Co-op in Charleston, and we had like a meet and greet. I signed a bunch of koozies that said, "Don't be like Alex Murdaugh." And that reminds me, I still have hot sauce I have to send you, so I'll send you some of those koozies.
Okay, good.
And I was overwhelmed. It was mostly women who were fans. They were awesome. There was a few guys who were fans. Every single person was like overwhelmingly super nice. I was afraid like, if you get 100 couple people, there's going to be one weirdo in there, but there really wasn't. Yeah. And so maybe I am a little naive going into this, hoping that like most trolls just stay in their basement and troll from behind keyboards. Maybe. And and thank God I have David there right beside me. He was like able to like move the line along. And if people started to linger and ask too many questions, he'd be like, all right, next. And
good. Yeah,
that's what you need.
Yeah, the best at doing that are casinos. They set up a thing where it says like, "Hi, welcome to the Mirage," and they put me there, and then the line. But those casino people, you get to say like one thing to me, and then they just take you away. Like I mean, I would be a little more loosey goosey than they are. They're really. It's a machine of
like go. Yeah, and like
sure gone.
Right. And there were some people that were like, several people that were like giving me tips to stories and saying like, I know this, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of wanted to be like, hang back, I want to talk to you. But yeah, I mean, I was amazed at how it was great to have that positive start to everything, because I really am terrified of like, I don't really, and I got like, I feel like during COVID, I definitely became a lot more introverted and less social than I usually am, and just got into my routine of like going to work in my house and not really going out. And so I don't get up and go to work every day. I get up and go to my basement. So being around a lot of people kind of makes me very anxious, especially with all the subject matter of Murdaughs. Right. I have not been great with going in public. So I was very happy with those first two couple events, and the fact that it went amazing. But I mean, I'm expecting, I don't know. I feel like something's gotta be weird, or some person.
Well, as long as David can bounce them out. Are they expecting you to go and do all the press stuff, like morning talk and all that?
Kind of, yeah. They expect like us to get the interviews.
Oh, well,
people think that like a book tour is, or it probably is for the bigger celebrities, but not in my case. People are like, oh, you're going to go on a book tour and like, you're going to be like flown around the world, and
right.
somebody fancy plans the whole thing for you and books your hotels and everything. No, it's me and David being like, maybe we'll stop in this city on the way to Thanksgiving in Kansas. We're just kind of we're planning it as we go along, and I don't want to commit to too many events just because I don't want to get like overly bombarded and overwhelmed. And David's always like, you've dedicated a lot of time to this book, and God bless it, but like, we got to move on at some point. We can't just be touring around.
Well, you could, it's funny. One time the Tonight Show told me, because the comedians traditionally on the Tonight Show were always at the end. And I said, how come we're always last, like doing 7 minutes of jokes? And they said, well, because how it ranks, it's like actors are number one, and then music's number two, comedy's number three as far as popularity, and the only thing worse than comedy was authors. And I was like, oh, that's sad. Oh, that's so... There's some authors I'm sure that have a good personality. That does not count, like Stephen King or something, like, because he's already a celebrity.
Right. Yeah.
But then the reality people encroached in that lineup and moved authors even further down the pecking order. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's just, you guys are just making assumptions that all authors are not interesting off the page.
Right. And I think that like a lot are interesting, but it's just like, how did you, when you started your career out in comedy, like get the confidence to like be actually comfortable on stage? Because when I just realized it when I was on a small stage at the College of Charleston, if I get into a room and all eyes are on me, I'm immediately like, and I lose my train of thought. Like, do you just get used to it?
I think you just get used to it. But I also like bartended and waited tables. Like I was just always used to walking up to strangers going, what can I do for you?
Right.
Hello, I'm here. I'm your server for tonight. And I'm from a big family, so everybody's kind of mouthy. And you got to speak up or you're never going to get heard. I don't know. That part never even, that part doesn't, no. But I don't know what that says good or bad about me. But I mean, there's just people that I'm just as comfortable. But also you start in a comedy club on an open mic night, there's probably only, 40 people on a Monday. So it doesn't seem crazy. Like we always joke, it seems more like an AA meeting. And it's just your turn to talk. Like, and they're just sitting at the table, comfortable in jeans and t-shirt. Like it doesn't.
Right.
The old school clubs it was so compact. It just felt like more like a family room, I guess. It's not like all of a sudden you get put at the Fox Theater. There's 5,500 people there. You'd be like, oh my God, no. I'm running away.
And you just sold it. You just sold out in St. Louis, right? You had
at the
show.
Yeah.
So did it feel like more? Does like the difference in crowds with like a crowd that big feel different, or it's just all the same?
It's all the same, except the actual venue can help or hurt. Like the St. Louis one is good because the seats go up and they're closer, but then there's some venues where that bottom thing goes way, 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 way back. And I feel like those people are never part of the show. I feel like they're detached. Because I've sat in those seats, or at the Ryman, there's an overhang. And if you get underneath that overhang, like I've sat in those seats and I'm like, I don't really feel like I'm 100% here.
Right.
I'm like under a roof. I'm under a roof.
Right.
Within a building.
Right.
So that's the only thing that would really change how I hear it on stage. I don't know how I do know from sitting at other people's shows. You just don't, it's not like being in the free range chicken part. You're like a caged chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that but I'm glad that I say like, this is my author era, and I just have to kind of embrace this new part of myself that's more extroverted and just go for it and not be so nervous. And I mean, which genuinely these things that I'm speaking at, like everybody there is is a super fan. So I'm like, why are you even nervous, Mandy? I just have it in the back of my head that like some lunatic who attacks me on Twitter all the time is going to just be in the front row staring me down. But then I shouldn't even be afraid of that. That's stupid too.
Right. That's why David will throw him out.
Yeah, it's a whole protocol.
You can make a joke about that. Yeah, mine is if somebody gets too out of hand, I say, I think I need to buy you a shot. And that's my code to the bouncers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because it sounds like I'm being nice to the person, but really I'm throwing you out.
Nice. We got to come up with one of those, David.
Yeah, I don't know. Your events may not have the amount of liquor on hand that mine have. You may have to think of something else.
So that might have been 2 years ago on your podcast. I don't even know years anymore. Long time ago, it felt like you gave us a shout out and you found out about our show and you started listening to the Murdaugh Murders podcast. Do you remember how you found out about it?
Well, I think if I remember right, I saw the story about him somewhere. I don't know about him. And so I thought, well, there has to be like a podcast because this is a big deal, like in that area. And then I went and found your podcast, and then I got super mad because I felt like the regular Joe Blow media, meaning let's say Good Morning America, or they were just poaching everything I already heard on your podcast, but they never credited you. They were just like, oh, so all this stuff's going on in South Carolina. And then every week I was telling my friends, listen to this. This person is 5 weeks ahead of the Today Show, and they're just stealing it. That's why I think you should get to go back on those things and go, all of you owe me an apology, or at least a 6-pack of my favorite beer, because you totally stole my work. And you condensed it. So it wasn't as, quote, hard for the morning people, because the morning shows want to be, oh my gosh, this is a sensitive subject. We have to make pies in a minute. Let's get this away. Let's talk about this. So then I just started listening to every episode all the way, till now. Because I also said I was a journalism major at college, and I don't feel like there's journalism anywhere anymore. Like the reason I quit journalism is because it got too hard. So nobody's doing the hard work anymore. But unlike me, they didn't quit and go do something else. They just slack off at the job. Like to go down to a courthouse and go through, find information and all that, the horrible stuff you have to learn in journalism school. I felt like nobody's doing that anymore, except you were. And then I saw how young you were, and I was like, well, good for the young people. Like, this isn't some lady like me that's like in her 50s. Like, there's that, I won't cuss, but there's a documentary, Don't F with Cat. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Don't F with, okay.
Yeah.
That lady, that lady in Las Vegas did the work. And she
did.
It's amazing what people can do when they decide, I'm upset, or I'm going to find this jerk who's killing cats, and it turns out he's killing people. It was just, it's nice to see every once in a while somebody really kind of get off their ass and do the work. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Lots of responses to what you were saying, because I'm trying to keep track of my mind. But first of all, you said, like, I should go back on all those shows. It's so funny because I didn't necessarily talk crap on... I did. I talk crap on a lot of national news outlets, not only for stealing my work. I mean, that was one thing. I just kind of got used to it and whatever. But them just being very, very lazy and giving the benefit of the doubt to Alex Murdaugh and his stupid lawyers, no matter like how many times they lied, and lazy as in they just didn't take the time to understand the complexity of the story. And so many journalists would call me or would find my email in those first few months, and their immediate response was like, can you give me they would ask, can you give me the lowdown? Can you basically tell me, give me the background? And I'm like, I have a podcast that provides the background. Yeah. Like, listen, I don't have time to like just be calling and giving everybody my notes from the last 2 years. That's insane. But I just kind of realized, and I talk a lot about this in my new book, how broken the system of journalism really is, and how, like, God, a lot of news reporters from very well-respected agencies were doing very little on this story. And I thought, like, oh, the big guns are coming into town. I'm going to start to get really competitive, and they're all going to take my sources. And so I started to get more competitive and kind of started to get crazy with myself. And I mean, for the most part, they were still like a million years behind on everything. And I was very surprised by that. And granted, it was a weird situation because I was ahead of everybody. Like, I had 2 years of research already done, and I talk about that in the book a lot, and like what that research entailed. I don't think a lot of people understand, like, when they see a story, how that comes about, how the journalist comes up with sources, how she found that court document. And I go into all of that fun stuff. But yeah, now they, as in the book, people want me to like kind of go back to all of the people that I've maybe talked I talked some crap on legacy media, and now I'm like, help me sell my book.
Well, they still will at the end. And they're just looking for the money. So if you boost their ratings, they'll do it. They'll say you should do it. If they want you, I would go do it.
And then I think that,
they're right.
But that's the thing that's so annoying. It's like, I think I figured out the formula that they're all following with like true crime cases and everything, and they don't do the legwork on. There's a million unsolved murders across the country. There's, I'm sure, a handful of other other type stories that are just out there and nobody's dug into them. Like, throw a rock and you'll find a crazy murder story in the United States. But the media just focuses on like the same 7 every year, over and over, and it's like all of them just go on the same. Like, we've heard how many different versions have we heard of like the Jeffrey Dahmer case, or like old cases too. They like to spend lots of time and resources on it, and it's like, why? What is the point of that? But I've figured out that like they don't want to do the legwork that I did for 2 years and that Liz did for 2 years, without knowing that the reward is big, like without knowing that there's a huge audience out there for that. They don't want to spend that time, but they're like, everybody and their brother is clicking on Murdaugh stories, so we're just gonna keep on that. And it's a crazy world.
I don't think the big networks care about, well, just the big shows. There's no reason to mention names, but if there's not enough flair in it, they don't want it. But if I love true crime, it doesn't have to have all the flair for me to want to watch it. But they're never going to put 2 years of work into anything. No way.
Right.
I mean, they're just never going to do that. So if nobody does it, if you didn't do what you've done, what would be our coverage of this? I mean, that's something to really think about. Like the local paper person that kind of cares, but they just repeat and write what they've been told.
Right. And like local newspapers are gutted at this point, and they, like the Hampton County Guardian, where this all happens, that paper doesn't even like technically exist anymore. It's owned by Gannett, and so there's one reporter in Hampton, and he of course has to get to other stories. And I know what it's like to be in a local small town newspaper reporter. You got a lot to do, and you don't have time to do like investigations or dig into anything. And the corporate overlords, they don't care about that either. Like, no, and they're just like, crank out the clicks, man. And it's just disgusting. But I talk about a lot of that in my book, and just how, and I worked at McClatchy, which was one of the largest newspaper companies in the country before while the boat crash was going on, and up until 2019, the end of 2019. But McClatchy, it was just amazing what was going on there and the priorities that were given to reporters. It was basically like, you need stories that will generate clicks and generate subscriptions online, and they like wanted to try to basically make reporters start to sell subscriptions, or like they were they were like throwing around they were like, when at the end when I was there, they were like, eventually we'll have quotas for reporters to meet for subscription sales. And I was like, hold on, I did not sign up to be a newspaper subscription salesperson. Like, that is not what. And I get paid nothing for this job. Like, it's already hard enough as it is. And they just kept making it harder on reporters. So I understand why there's not investigative journalism in the way that there should be.
I think you really have to, like in college, this friend of mine in journalism school, her name was Carrie. Carrie just liked like the fight of journalism. Like, she wanted to win. And I don't have that like extra gear, to the point where she ended up on 60 Minutes because she alone solved a murder in Alton, Illinois.
Good for her.
Now, yeah, I mean, it was amazing back then, because there's people like me going, can I just do a story on salad bars? Like, I can't fight the power, but I also felt like you can't do it and you'll never win. And she won. But she was one out of tons of us in school that actually just loved it so much. She took the the crappy pay and just did it.
Yeah, and I mean, I was the salad bar girl for years in journalism. Like, it took me a while to like get guts. I wanted to do the fight, but I was also like, I like stories about sharks and alligators, and they get tons of clicks, and like I get praise when I do these dumb stories. I had a thing at the packet where like it was in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, so like the easiest thing in the world was a shark story or an alligator story. And I was all over that. Like, I have to admit, I was that. And also, it's easier. Like, the environment kind of encourages that. But, like, if you're not getting paid that much, you might as well have some fun at work and write about the local salad bar that you're interested in versus, like, going to city council and figuring out how much money they're stealing from taxpayers. Like, that's hard work.
There was one point where I worked for UPI. That tells you how old I am. AP's competitor back in the day. And they assigned me to the story of the St. Louis City cable company fight. So there were like 3 cable companies trying to get the business of St. Oh my God. I mean, at one point, I literally did fall asleep in the courtroom. Like, I had to sit there and listen to all this. And then I thought, I don't have this in me. I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, I can't even follow, more or less write down what I just heard. I don't even understand what I heard. They complicate it so on purpose, I'm sure. You're going to weed me out. You're going to weed me out. And then one day I'm going to go, oh, so-and-so got the thing for the St. Louis City all the cable in St. Louis City is now run by so-and-so. And this all happened last Thursday. And yeah. But what do you sit there for that?
Right. And I mean, God bless like reporters that are going to city council meetings and doing that type of stuff. Because I started my career doing that in a small town. And at the paper I was at, there was like one other reporter that was there for a hot minute, but she left very quickly. And she was like trying to give me the rundown of how things go at the Waynesville Daily Guide, and was like, every Monday you sit in the sewer board meeting. Every Monday you have to go to sewer board. And I was just like, why do you go to sewer board? And I went to like one. And it's like they make things extra complicated and it's not very interesting, but they make things dull purposefully so that like nobody pays attention. But the other thing was that like I noticed all these legacy companies had reporters like that who just went to sewer board just because they've always been going to sewer board every week, and they waste like 5 hours a week on sewer board. And it's like, why are we doing this? So I kind of started my career kind of asking like, maybe like our resources could be used for other things that are not only I wanted to cover things that were more interesting, just so I didn't I get bored very easily. I could not sit in those meetings. The reporter that was telling me the lowdown, like, I think she legitimately just like going to meetings and sitting and not doing anything. And I think a lot of like old school reporters really do like that. I'm not like that. I'm like, oh, what's the purpose of this? In or out? Let's go. Right. And yeah,
I good time. A lot of them, if it was an interesting topic that does not include the St. Louis City Cable Company contract, but like, let's say it was about what books are going to be allowed in school. That city council meeting would have kind of interested me, and I'd be like, okay, this would be good. But then after about 4 people talk too long, I'm like, this is the worst open mic ever. Like, at open mics, they have a light in the back. And if you get the light, you have to get off stage within a minute. That's the rule. And if you don't, they cut the mic. And then if you still won't get off stage, I've never seen it go that far, someone will come and get you and physically take you off the stage. I felt like all of that should have been implemented at those meetings. Like somebody gets up, wants to talk about some book that's in a 3rd grade reading list, and then they want to tell their whole life story. No, Grandma. No, we're not doing that. Or a bell or something to go, nay. I thought that was my last chance. Well, this might be interesting. And then I was like, oh, there's no controlling this. There's no bouncers. Nobody's in charge.
It's true. Like the amount of time wasted I have sat in those types of government meetings where like there's just no, and I found that like a lot of older people in communities, they just go to these things and say things in these things just to do something, and to like it's clearly the only person that they talk to all day with city council, so they are going to talk forever, and the rest of us are just there to as hostages of a boring situation. And it's crazy.
They plan it all week, and I think they really think when I get down there and say what I want to say, you're going to see some changes. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not, Grandpa. Just stay home and watch Hogan's Heroes. Watch the War Channel or whatever, the History Channel. Like I think they truly believe, on some level, aside from their boredom, that they're actually going to change something, and that's probably not the way to go about that.
And I'm all in for like public engagement and change and all of those things, but a lot of times it's, like the things that I've seen debated that city council, or that people get so worked up over, are just so ridiculous. And like noise ordinance and things like that. That it's like, you're not really gonna make a big change with a 9 p.m. noise ordinance, and like you're just gonna like make people less happy because they want to play their music at 9 o'clock, whatever. It's I do miss.
We make people less happy. That is my goal tonight.
That's a lot. That is a lot of old people older. I don't want to be offensive. People who attend city council meetings.
I watched one online. I don't even know where it was. It was about pickleball. Now that one was worth it because the pro pickleball people are super opinionated, and everybody's older. Like, I'll just say over 65. And then the people, I started siding with the people who live next to the court, where they're like, oh, no, this starts at 6 in the morning and it goes till 9 at night, and it's slowly driving us crazy. And I was like, you know what? I think I could see how that can happen. That noise is, and now my house lost value because nobody wants to buy my house because I'm right next to the pickleball people. But then I played pickleball and it was super fun. So I don't really, but that was like one of the only fun ones I've seen in a long time.
And I think it was 2019, the last year I was at the Packet, I got involved. Have you seen Sun City? Have you been to Sun City? It's kind of like, they're old folks communities. The villages where your parents live, right?
Oh, no, they were only there for a short time. I moved them away from, they needed to be around people that were less political. Yeah.
So Sun City is like a retirement community, and it's outside of Hilton Head, and it was in our coverage area. And these old men called me from Sun City when I was a reporter, and they were like so upset that Sun City these guys lived kind of on a golf course, but basically where there was just open land next to their houses, they were going to put a public bathroom, and it was all very close. It was for the golf course, and it was like a whole thing. People, they packed the city council meetings to talk about this bathroom. I don't even I remember. I covered that thing for like several stories. It was like the story of the year at Sun City. And it was a lot, but I kind of understood it. Like, these guys were like, I bought this house thinking that there was a nice like piece of land right around me that was peaceful and whatever, and now there's a bunch of toilets and I don't want that. And I got it, but it's fascinating what people will put their minds to and rally around, and they started like support systems and like they organized. It's amazing.
Meanwhile, there are things in your town you could actually try to be working on that are a little more meaningful.
Yes. And that
world things or global things, or the bathroom's either going to get there or not. Why don't you move on to something less important?
Right. And I think that's the problem with reporters too, is that you get into a story like the bathrooms and it's easy and it's kind of funny and people click on it. It's fascinating. But it's like, are you really doing a public service, and are you really doing what you're supposed to be doing here? Or
the easy answer to the bathroom, like on golf courses, we have a code box and you only get the code up at the golf course and it changes every day.
Right.
So then you're only going to have a couple people using the bathroom.
Right. And it's,
I get it to you. Like, I've played with my mom and dad. I've played on these golf courses in Florida where I go to use the bathroom and my mom's like, the code is 4198, that whatever, right? I'm like, why is there a code? And they were like, I go, there's no one out here. We're like on the 13th hole. We're not near a home. We're not near. Well, because at the meeting, people were upset, homeless people. How would a homeless person know to come here? And if they did, they'd probably be like, I got to get out of here. There's no people for me to ask for food or money or.
And it's cold. Yeah, I don't.
Right. But the old people won. They won. There's codes on every bathroom and every golf course in Florida. And that's because some old person did not want to see some homeless person startle them when they went in the bathroom.
It's going to be really interesting to see like what happens to city councils and like everything as millennials take over. I know Hilton Head is very concerned about most of Hilton Head is private neighborhoods that have a gate and really, really strict HOAs. And like, if you know anything about millennials, like they're not into that. They're not into HOAs and like people telling them what to do all day. And yeah, it'll be very, and like, will anybody run? Or can we run?
No, I don't know. I used to do a joke in my act where Obama, when he was running for president, he'd say, I'm going to need some help here for you guys. I'm going to need you to email your congressman and tell them A, B, and C. And I'm like, well, then I'm going to need you to email me who they are. Because I don't even know, but you're making some grand assumptions here that I know all of my congressmen. And at that age, I did not know any of that.
No.
The older I get, the more I pay attention. But that's the problem, because then you're just going to have old people in charge.
Right.
You need to figure out how to interest young people. Maybe have alcohol. Maybe start liquor. Maybe, like a hot dog event. Something.
Right. And that's the thing, too, that like we discovered with the podcast, and Liz is so brilliant at, with you get these very heavy topics, and traditional journalism is just so anti, like, using humor to tell the news, explaining where your stance is and explaining your opinion and why, and how you found that opinion. And we found with our audience that like they loved that kind of stuff. They loved when like you can break something down, have a super complicated news issue, like all of the struggles for the money in the Alex Murdaugh case, which are just so freaking complicated. And I say Alex Murdaugh, I'm so mad that I said Alec at that first, in the first podcast. Yes, I will admit for the first time that was my biggest mistake so far. Because now everybody's like, is it Alec or Alex or is? And I'm like, it's a stupid name. I don't care. Whatever his name is, we all know what we're talking about.
It's that guy.
Murderer man baby. That man. He sucks. I'm tired of, I don't care how he pronounces his name, but at the beginning, like, it was kind of important how he pronounced his name because the locals said it one way and everybody else was saying it something different. So I was trying to get some local street cred. I don't even know where I was going with this. Boiling down topics, but like,
but I think this was cool about the podcast because yours, and there's others that I listen to where they're going to go, we're doing a deep dive, but we're going to do it slowly. So as the listener, you're not like overwhelmed where you're like, too hard. Like I've listened to a lot of crypto ones because I'm sort of interested in all the crypto and all that. And some of them I think are super user friendly, and others I think I happen to know a lot about that. So I like that. But if you did not, you wouldn't even know what they were talking about.
Right.
But at least now they're all out there. So if you really want to know everything about the Murdaugh Murders, then go listen to yours. And it's user friendly, but complete.
Yeah, and we kept it entertaining. I mean, the point of it is journalism, but we also made sure that like our audience was paying attention and our audience could actually understand these complicated subjects. And like we were saying earlier, that is one big conclusion that I found is that things like the sewer board can seem extra complicated, but because they put all these words and they make it sound really confusing. But you strip away all of that, and it usually is just not complicated, and they're all trying to fool you. So that has been what we've been doing so far, and it's been very illuminating to like show people that they can actually figure out what's going on in their local government, and they can get court documents from lawsuits and things like that, and teach them these tools that like you can actually figure this stuff out too. It doesn't take, you don't need a journalism degree. I just think that our society,
I feel like we were never taught any of that. Like when I'm in fifth grade. No, when you're in fifth grade, somebody goes, "That's the mayor." Oh, okay. What's that guy do? Like they don't even explain the structure from local government to regional government to federal government to. That's why I think the super nerds can sneak in because they're more apt to understand all that and go, "Oh, I'll run for Congress over here because the districting is strange." I mean, every week Lewis yells about redistricting and then he tries to get me to understand it. And I'm like, "Lou, I don't care about your boundaries. I know where kids care. I know that. But it's too hard. I don't gerrymandering." Yeah, like Lou's guy though. He's very upset about gerrymandering. Yeah. Very upset. And I'm like, "Lou, word up, you're the only one." So when you're gonna get into this at happy hour, you're gonna notice people drifting out because nobody's interested, even though we all should be. We were never taught the basis of any of it.
Right. Like I remember when I was in Waynesville, Missouri, I asked the question to that reporter and I was an editor. It was an awkward situation. I walk into this, like, it was a tiny newspaper in Waynesville, Missouri. I think we had like 1,000 subscribers and it was a 5-day-a-week paper.
Wow.
So it was a lot of work. I had a sports reporter, this one reporter for a hot minute, and then a designer, and then I had to figure out like what went in the paper every day and how that went down. And I was fresh out of college, and it was just the craziest job that you could ever imagine. But I remember asking this girl reporter who had been there forever, and I felt stupid asking, like, does the mayor vote in city council? And she was like, she shamed me for asking that question. Like, you don't know how city council works, blah, 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 blah.
No.
Nobody knows how city councils work.
No, only people on city council. Even half the council people clearly don't know how it works because they don't shut up when they're told their time's up.
Right. Like, none of it ever, like, and I think that that's all honestly by design. Like we all took civics in high school or middle school or whatever, but it didn't teach the very basics of local government. Like you said, like we all knew who the mayor was, but did we have any idea what they did or the kind of budget that was under them? Or like some cities the mayor votes, some cities the mayor gets paid, some cities the mayor doesn't. Like some cities the mayor's a full-time job. But it's fat. But I think that like society likes to like I felt super stupid for asking that question. Like how do we even like how does city council even work? But nobody knows.
Well, and I would say, and then why would young people want to get involved? There's no the money's terrible. You would almost have to like somehow deep in your heart want to make a change, and you're like, okay, this is the only way I can do that. Like you'd have to be almost possessed or obsessed with the idea because the money is not there. It's no fun. Like the only thing I knew about our mayor is that he was this Irish guy with the last name Egan, and then on St. Patrick's Day he would ride around the neighborhoods in a green convertible Cadillac and throw candy at us. And I thought, that's a great job, right? And I don't know what else he does, but
I think I remember thinking that the mayor was like a millionaire, like if you're and right. Probably thought that like throughout high school, like just did not know anything. And again, And in journalism school, it really wasn't taught anything about. And in college, we just kind of skipped over local government and all that works. But I was thrown into this Waynesville, Missouri, and thank God I became friends with the mayor there. And she was this wonderful woman, Luge Hardman. She's a big character in my book, actually, because she was like my first source in journalism. And she was this retired history teacher who, like you were saying, she was that person with like the crazy enough bone in her to like, I want to make a difference in my community. And she did not get paid enough to cover her gas in Waynesville. Like, she did it as her retired job, but like it literally didn't cover her monthly gas to get to all the meetings and things. And because she was an active mayor, like you can get elected and be like a boring mayor, or you could like try to make a difference. And yeah, Luge got paid almost nothing, and it was fascinating. She really helped me explain like how everything works. I had no idea. I mean, I don't think most people know, and I don't understand why high schools don't explain that to kids, because
they don't, and they also don't explain. They also don't explain law. Like, my dad was a lawyer, and all he would come home from work and just go, I don't know why people are talking to the police. You do not have to talk to the police until you are under arrest. I'm like 9. And I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm never talking to the cops, Dad. You got it. But people, when I see like on all these shows, these murder shows where they're like, so-and-so walked into the police station because they asked him to come down. I'm like, oh my God, you don't have to do that.
I know.
I don't know that. Normal people, like my brother goes, Kathleen, not everybody had a lawyer screaming things at the house at night about the American justice system. I'm like, I know, but everybody should get to know those things. Like, they should teach us in school.
They should. Right. Like, you have rights. That should be a basic, like, you have, like, before we teach you the rest, let's teach you about, like, the rights that you actually have and how to not get screwed over by your own government. Because that's terrible.
Or also get screwed over by the people your taxpayers are paying. I'm paying for that cop. So
exactly.
I don't have to get out of the car. Then I don't have to get out of the car.
Right. And like I'm trying to remember the Netflix show that David and I watched. I think it was during COVID. It was like Confessions of False Confessions. Have you ever seen that show? It's insane. It's like a series of deep dives into different cases where people accidentally confessed because they were in situations where like their spouse was murdered and the police were like, come with me. And they were like, okay, gotta come with you. And of course their spouse was murdered. So they're like really, really wrecked and like not in a good spot. And the police like basically convince them that they're trapped in this room for 48 hours with like no food, no help, and they end up confessing to murder because they feel like there's no way out. And it makes sense when you watch a show of like, oh, this is how it actually happens, because I could see if you didn't know your basic rights of like, no, I'm not coming with you. We're honestly taught the opposite. I feel like we were taught like, go with cops. If a cop tells you to come with you, go right along, and that's wrong.
Or just kids are told if that's a person in a position of authority, you're supposed to just abide by whatever they say. But this is a different situation. And if your dad doesn't happen to be a lawyer or a judge or something like that, you're not going to, how else would you know except watching these crime shows?
Right, unless you're a true crime nerd or like...
What was the one about on Netflix, the Averys,
making a murderer?
When they took the young one down, the 15-year-old, and then he says all this stuff, and he goes, "Can I?" After he said he killed somebody, and then he goes, "Can I go play Xbox now?" Like my head just wanted to explode and go, somebody. And then that lady did try to help them, but like, you've already said too much. You've already done. You didn't have to. And I'm not rooting for murderers. I'm just rooting for right.
I know, right. Same. And I a lot of people always criticize me as being like very pro prosecution, but I'm not at all that way. Like, usually I've seen enough to know that there are lots and way too many people in prison for crimes they did not commit, and that it happens mostly to poor people that like they don't have a lawyer, they don't know their rights, and they just get screwed by the system. I've seen that happen. And that was something I kind of like started to pay attention to later in my journalism career of like, wow, a lot of people in our county jail are just in jail literally because they're poor. There's no other reason. And that's so insane to me. And like, why are there's some really weird charges that if you pay attention to your county jail and like click in my county jail, you can click on the mugshot and what they're in for. And there's one charge called walking on a highway.
Oh,
you can.
Is it in Indiana by any chance? Because Indiana has road signs that say no standing.
Right.
I don't even know. Is that a problem? Or people just standing out here?
But I think a lot of these laws were literally designed as a racist mechanism, as a reason for white cops to be able to arrest black people, as a just, I don't know. It's just wrong. It's just purely wrong. And I don't understand why it's still happening. And also it's just insane to me that like, if you don't have anybody around you who has $200 for this stupid charge, you could end up in jail for like 60 days, which I've seen. And that's just horrible. Like the whole thing is bananas wrong.
People just don't know the rights. And then if you do start to understand it all, then you start to even more mad. Like, because if they say bail for Sam Bankman-Fried, his mother and father have half the money that he stole, and then they just put that money up, and then he's free.
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah, I mean, now he was not granted bail, but had he been, like a lot of the other, Elizabeth Theranos, for instance, she was out on bail the whole time, playing with a dog and having a baby, and because her parents had enough money. But if she was just regular Joe, you would have never had all that time. You couldn't have come up with the bail.
Did you see the New York Times article on her that like she was the new Elizabeth?
That's right.
She was like reinvented herself as this kinder, nicer. It was a ridiculous profile, and it gave her.
I did. Yeah. That lady who wrote that, I felt like you want this to be true. I feel like you're hoping this becomes, and she's a sociopath. She's not going to become a nice lady tomorrow. Instead, it's not going to happen.
And she like basically admitted in the article the journalist was fooled by her, and she was like, it's like, well, that is your number one problem as a journalist, because we are supposed to sniff out the BS. Like that is
right. You that's our skill. That lady fell for the sociopathic dog and pony show. We were like, I don't know. I thought he was really likable.
And like with everything with Elizabeth Holmes, like it's kind of like Alex Murdaugh. We're like, I can understand when people are fooled by them, when nobody else is really questioning around them, and they're this powerful person and they walk into a room, blah, blah, blah. But like now, if you're fooled by Elizabeth Holmes, you are not very smart. Because we know way too much. Now, if you're fooled by Alex Murdaugh, you are not very smart.
I did wonder, that woman reporter who wrote that, I thought, have you not read any other articles about this lady? How do I know more about Elizabeth Holmes than you do? And it's not, I'm obsessed with sociopaths. So that's why I happen to know, because it's like a hobby. But you work for the New York Times.
Yeah, and you should have. And you should have admitted, like, yeah, and that was one thing that I was like, that was a like major gut check moment for me, where I was just like, we are off base here in the journalism world. We are printing like glorification pieces of monsters like Elizabeth Holmes. She's a horrible human being, and this should not be happening, period.
Where was the editor? Where was the editor? I don't get it. Why did you allow that to go out? They did a thing, and I'm not here to just bash the New York Times 100%, but they did a thing on stand-up comedy. It was like in the fun section, and it was like a night on the town with so-and-so. I don't even remember the comic. Half of the things in there weren't true. And I thought, well, I know that's not true. So now if I read the story about the opera person, is that half true?
Right.
Like nobody checked.
Right.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. And it didn't, that's no harm, no foul. You're just talking about comedy clubs in New York. But when we're talking about a sociopath who stole everybody's stuff, you can't just be enamored with her. I think she was like wanted a meet and greet. Like, oh, I get to meet Elizabeth Holmes.
And like,
Yeah.
but also with the editor, and like, I've been a newspaper editor. I know what your decisions are. If you have to think about how it looks in Facebook, Twitter, and people that don't read the article, because most people don't read the article at all. They see the headline, they see the photo, and then they will go from there with their opinions. And you have to think about that and how it comes across. In that Elizabeth Holmes article, I don't remember what the headline said specifically, but that compared with a photo just looked like this is like her Vogue profile. Her doing something cool.
Yeah, and what's crazy is you're doing the exact same thing that started all this.
Right.
When Fortune magazine and all those magazines would put her on. None of them did a bit of research. None of them, except finally, the guy, I think he was out west.
Wall Street Journal, I think it was.
Yeah, okay, wait a minute. The money isn't adding up here. Where is the product? Show me your machine that's blood testing. But then he knows he's up against some of the most, George Shultz, some of the most powerful people in the world have invested. Clinton, everybody. Who's going to listen to that guy? I'm sure that was his thought. It would be my thought.
Right. And with Theranos, like she had so many huge investors and she had everybody fooled, man. But thank God for that one reporter and just asking also, basic questions.
How could this always crack me up? Like, so there's these old interviews with Elizabeth and she has like a normal kind of higher pitched voice. And then all of a sudden she started talking like this. Like right there. You have to know this lady is full of it. Like, there's something wrong. This isn't normal to go, well, I think this sounds more commanding. And I think it was so obviously fake.
Right. And I, years ago, I listened to, I feel like it was ABC did a podcast on her. It was called The Dropout. And then it ended up being a show.
Yeah,
it was really good. But yeah, I mean, that's all the basic research. Like, they did all the homework. Even that podcast alone, like that, I remember they interviewed somebody who went to college with her and was like, yeah, that voice is totally not her at all.
Right.
She literally has developed this crazy persona. And I mean, again, like, how are you fooled by somebody who has been exposed to this degree of being a complete fraud? And I'm getting that again with Alex Murdaugh. Like, there's been this new rise of like pro Alex Murdaugh people and people that are like, he's innocent, blah, blah, blah. And I don't understand it for the life of me. And again, like, I'm fine with people. 2 years ago, I got lots of phone calls from people that were like, I don't think he did it, man. Like, I knew him, and I would say 2.5 years ago, because before he got exposed for the financial crime, a lot of people said, like, that a lot of people stood up for him more, which was understandable. But now, knowing everything that we know, even from just the financial crimes alone, it's like, how could you possibly even care to stand up for this man? He is such a piece of garbage. I don't understand it.
I don't either, except I think there's some people that just like being contrarians, and then there's other people that they think if they take the side that's less popular, they get more attention. What do you mean you didn't think he does it? And then that starts a bar conversation because you're the odd guy out. There's some guy on TikTok, like every other Thursday, he'll go, I have another thing to show you why he didn't commit these murders. Follow me for part 3. And then I never follow him because I know whatever he's going to say is just garbage. But those people are out there. I mean, they're out there.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's money in TikTok and do it. I mean, I know that, like, when you get to a huge degree in TikTok, then obviously there's money. But, like, for the people that don't have that many followers and the people just, like, throwing out these crazy conspiracy theories. And, I mean, I think I know the guy you're talking about, and he has too many followers, like... he has too many followers than he deserves, but it is TikTok and that's all weird. um, but like, I don't I don't understand the point of putting that effort into things, and like you just wake up one day and you want to defend Alec. No, nobody's saying what wants to do that, because at the end of the day, he's a crap person who's obviously a sociopath, and there's no point of defending him because he deserves to be in prison for the rest of his life. And I
think it's the attention. Because like that guy on TikTok, why else would anybody watch his TikTok? There's no reason. But then he can get up in a day and say, look, I have all these people, and I think it makes him feel good.
Yeah, but like, he's also a fraudster. I know who you're talking about, and he got in. He was one of those PPP loan guys. And admitted to that. And like, those are the types of people, when you actually figure out who they are, it's like, oh, that's why you think Alex Murdaugh's a good guy, because you're obviously not.
Because you're a bad guy too. Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll never understand the people that will defend it. And I always love the people that go, well, I never saw him murder anybody. Well, that doesn't mean he didn't. Just because I never saw him, hit somebody or be violent. Well, that doesn't mean your one experience does not cover the map here. And it comes up a lot when people say that. Like, well, I never saw him to be violent. Well, do you live with him? Are you his kid? Are you his husband or wife or partner? They think their opinion is so important that if they didn't witness it, then therefore it never happened to anybody. That's crazy.
Right. And it's just like, I feel like we're very similar, and like we were raised Catholic growing up, and you have a level of shame with that. You have like, but I feel like I was never raised to think that my opinions mattered all that much. And that like,
yeah,
I just don't. I don't understand. I don't understand where these people are coming from and why they think the things they do. And I don't know.
I feel that way when I hear kids in grade schools where the kid obviously did something, and then the parent will defend the kid and somehow make it the teacher's fault. And I always think, my parents, they didn't even need any proof. If the teacher said we did something, they just went with that. And then we were in trouble. There were a few times where I tried to put up my own defense and go, here's the thing. And then it never worked. And they're like, no, if the nun said it, you did it.
Same. My parents were immediately like, well, what did you do wrong, Mandy? And there's a hilarious John Mulaney stand-up, also a Catholic, and he talks about how like, he's like, I could have been dragged in by like a hobo, and my parents would have believed like the least credible man in town over me. It does not matter. And that's how, like, my parents were always like, well, what did you do? Like, you must have done something to get into this situation.
Right.
And that's just how I've always viewed everything. So I just don't. I mean, what are you saying, David? Okay. David says that we need to wind down. Kathleen, lots of things I'd like to ask you about, but let me think about this. What intrigued you the most about the Murdaugh story, and like what kept you interested in it?
The absolute most, I think that someone would be willing to kill their wife and son for money, well, drug money, or to not, for whatever reason, just be willing to do that. And then outside of that life, you're, quote, normal. It's not like you're Charles Manson and you're doing this all the time. Jeffrey Dahmer. So I think it was just what seems to be a normal guy, outstanding lawyer, blah, and then he has this other life. That's the part that really, like, I don't think we've ever had a story like that I can think of.
Yeah, the motive to a lot of people, I don't think made a lot of sense. And it is just hard to wrap your head around. It makes sense to me just because I'm a nerd and I've been doing this for 4 years. And I feel, unfortunately, like I understand like Murdaugh's brain and I don't want to. But I think that's the point. It's like normal people aren't supposed to understand what would motivate this man to murder his family, because it's murder always should be the last case scenario. I was amazed during the trial of how many people were like really wanting that he cheated and that's why he murdered or something like that. And it's like, well, if his life is collapsing and he can find a way out, I think that's the whole point of this. I don't think you need that like cliche murder motive. I was like incentive. But yeah, I think it's I wish I think it's funny that like you're very interested in sociopaths, and I think that there's like this whole phenomenon around sociopaths and with like Elizabeth Holmes, Alex Murdaugh, but Alex Murdaugh might be like just the most complicated one. Unfortunately for me, because it just keeps going, and I just don't know of another case that's just has this many threads to keep pulling at over and over. Epstein maybe, but Epstein was ended with a lot of it ended with his death, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's a never ending stupid story.
He's not the only thing too, and then I'll ask you my question. Murdaugh didn't like Elizabeth Holmes followed a blueprint of how to become a Silicon Valley superstar. And it's pretty laid out there if you want to try.
Right.
Go get high-powered investors, say you have a product, it's no secret, nobody can look at it, it's invisible, blah, blah, blah. And then we've seen it happen before. So hers fascinated me because the media went along with it and propped it up and built it up. But Murdaugh is just there's no similar thing that I can think of except for an actual like meth head, say in Wyoming, that shoots his grandma for money. I mean, other than that, but that guy probably wasn't what Murdaugh was to begin with.
Right.
So if you want to watch these shows on Oxygen where people are busting into trailers, shooting their grandpa, for beer money, that's a different kind of crazy. So here's my question for you.
Yes.
Was there ever a point in all this where you were scared of the amount of power he did have?
Yeah, absolutely. Many times I mean, from the second I started putting my name on stories associated with the Murdaughs, I started to get emails of like, you should be careful. These people are really powerful. And that's stuff kind of like, I didn't get emails like that before. Like I said, I was kind of a salad bar reporter. And I wasn't used to things, but I had definitely like looked into, I definitely had written about crimes and some serious cases before Murdaugh came along. However, I had just never been warned by that many people that these people were dangerous. Like that, it was something that was just all of the time people were coming out of nowhere saying, hey, be careful. And it wasn't necessarily like, hey, or they weren't trying to be threatening. They were just, I think, trying to look out for me, but it just made it all the worse. But when I was investigating the Stephen Smith case in 2019.
Sorry.
It's okay. When I was investigating the Stephen Smith case in 2019, Liz and I actually went to the scene, and we had heard just all of these rumors at that point about how powerful the Murdaughs were, how nobody ever investigated anything in Hampton County, and be careful if you go there because the cops are all on your side, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And
I never thought all that.
it's terrifying. And we went to the site, and I talk about this in my book. We went to the site of where Stephen was killed, and we got tailed by a highway patrolman. A highway patrol is the same agency that investigated the Stephen Smith death and did a very poor job of it. And it was a very, to the point where Liz turned her car around in, like, a driveway, and then the highway patrolman tailed us and turned his car around in the same driveway. And
oh, wow.
It was just my heart was like, you're thinking, like, Cousin Vinny, you're thinking all those crazy stories of, like, you can just get in these small towns and they can arrest you and do whatever. And we were, like, freaked out so bad. But he ended up stopped following us, and we crossed the county line, and we're like, but I think it's things like that just cloud all of Hampton County, and that stuff is always in your head when you go there, and you don't know if it's paranoia or if it's real, but it's just very, very nerve-wracking. And just the amount of people that really hype it up and really tell you to be careful and tell you these people are very dangerous and very powerful, look out. That was the thing that got in my head the most. But it's also just like, okay, so what? Like, what? Tell me what they're gonna do specifically, or, like, tell me something specific. Like, do I do?
I don't know what they'd be capable of, but I would definitely have like a Ring doorbell, and
we have all that. Yeah.
I would just be afraid getting out of my car. Just a hillbilly move, like somebody takes a baseball bat to my kneecap, and then I got to deal with that for the rest of my life. Like,
that's a terrible thing, right? I don't want to deal with any of that, which is probably like, and I talk about this in the book. I started, like, secluding myself from a lot of the world, just hearing all these things in my head and thinking all these things, like, or what if they like tail me and I get cut off the road and get in a minor car accident, something like that. Like, I didn't want any of those things to happen because I wanted to keep going. And so I just kind of secluded myself from a lot of the world there for a while and was, like, just so into it. But that was really bad too. Like, that's really bad for your mental health. And then that just makes you afraid. And it, ultimately, I'm glad I did everything. And I'm glad that this investigation, panned out, and I'm glad Alex Murdaugh is in jail where he should be. However, as I talk about in the book, it just required a lot from a lot of people, and I think that our society just needs to stop and think about, like, what we're doing here. And a person like Alex Murdaugh should not have been able to get away with the things that he was getting away with for so many years. And that's my problem right now. It's just like, okay, well, we got that guy, but what about the whole system? And why don't we make the system better? And why don't we why were we all so gracious with this man that is 6 foot whatever, like, super tall, and, like, walks into a room like he owns the place? Why were we all just assuming that he was fine and dandy? And why was nobody checking out all these things that seem super obvious? And those are questions I keep asking, and it'll drive you crazy because I feel like I'm shouting to the universe all the time, like, will somebody just do something about this, please? Like, I don't want another situation to come out where somebody gets away with so much for so long and believes that they can get away with anything and everything, so they end up killing their family. That's what happened with Alex Murdaugh, and it's horrible. So that's where I'm at right now, as far as, like, I'm really glad that the investigation went where it did, and I'm really glad that we have our podcast and our platform and all the support, like, from people like you. However, I just hope the people in charge actually wake up and do something, and I will keep annoying them until they do.
All right, good job. I'll leave that to you. I'll be telling jokes on the road somewhere, thinking of you working very hard, and I will not be working very hard.
Please, keep telling your jokes because that matters too.
Love that.
We need people to tell jokes.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kathleen. This was awesome.
All right. It was great talking to you guys. I love your dogs. Keep taking dogs.
We will.